All right, guys, we're back on the Cadillac. We're doing the body work on it now. It might look like this is a lot of filler, but it's not very thick. I think maybe at its deepest, it'll be a 1/16 of an inch. So it's skim coat the whole thing, take care of any and all flaws. Took a couple coats. I go around and circle stuff with a pencil. Do not use a Sharpie if you're going to be doing this stuff. So what I do is I got a long block with some 80 grit on it, and I'm just blocking out the epoxy. This is kind of a bad demonstration because I only got one hand, but do that to find the low spots, and then I will go through and I circle it really big, and then I sand that low spot with my DA, and then I blow it off, and then I fill it, sand it. If it's not perfect, then I recircle it. So it's just a little low right here, and I think this corner is up, so I gotta tap this, get my hammer and tap this down just a scotch. But there's a couple dents on top of the fenders from people's elbows and arms, working on this thing over the years. This fender is long. It's like 5 feet 8 inches, I think. And then the quarter panel on this thing is 6 feet. So we did hammer and dolly. I got the video earlier. I did a bunch of work on this door. This door originally had like 3/8 of an inch of bondo on it. And same with this fender. This fender had like 3/8, almost ½ inch of mud on the thing. So now we got it to where it's like about a 1/16 maybe. And then back here, we just had to do a little bit above the seam just to kind of straighten that seam out. I was in a hurry welding it, and it distorted that body line a little bit. I got it mostly out, and then I just skimmed it quick. But then all we have is along the edge of the door. I don't know what happened to it. It must have got hit something. Right here was a high spot, so I got it tapped down just a little bit. So I got it circled so I can remember to fix that. There was a little dent up here. You can't really see it. You can kind of see the shininess, a couple little low spots. Is that? No, that's the bare metal. So there's, the ding is like right in the middle, right? It's right here. So, and I blow everything off, and then I feel for it right before I apply my filler, because sometimes it's hard to tell. This quarter panel, got a skim. There's something weird going on with this quarter, because the fender skirt fits perfectly, but measuring it from side to side, it's a little off. But I don't know, the fender skirt fits. I took a straight edge and put a straight edge across here, and it's all straight now. And down here, I have too many different textures going on. So when you guys are doing some body work and you're running your hands across it, right? And you can't tell, is it a high spot? Is it a low spot? And what sometimes happens is when you break through and you get to the metal, then you're going from something that's rough to super smooth to rough to smooth again. I mean, I know it's low right here because I'm breaking through here and here, but what you can do to save yourself some heartache is, rather than guessing, like you might see that you broke through, you think this is low or something, you think it's low here, so you put filler here, you block it. Well, now it feels low here, so you put some filler here, you block it. Well, now it feels low over here. And rather than doing these little patches, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a light skim coat all the way across here, and it's just going to be really thin, but then that way I'll block it, and then it's all going to feel uniform. You're not going to get these different textures. And I'm telling you, that I've got a lot of friends that have tried doing body work on their own, and they fight that really bad. So just do a light skim over the whole thing, and then block it, and then feel it. And then if it feels straight, then just kind of keep blocking until you break down to these metal spots. So, and then having bare metal isn't a big deal. when you go to, the primer I got is a direct metal primer. I'm going to be using the Evercoat Super Build 4-to-1, and you can spray right directly over bare metal. But people say, you see guys on TV and stuff, and they say, well, you can't put body filler over bare metal. Well, what are you going to do? You're not going to sit there and epoxy this and then come back the next day, block it, and then do a coat of mud, and then block it, break through, re-epoxy it. The only time I've ever seen rust come out from behind, or rust behind Bondo, is when they've had it wet. If they got the Bondo, they had it in Bondo and it sat outside and it got rained on, or they wet sand it and that water will soak through the Bondo and get to the metal and it'll start rusting behind. I'm not a big fan of wet sanding because of that. Or if it's just primed and then it goes and sits outside and gets wet. Primer is like a sponge, Bondo's like a sponge. It's just going to absorb that water. That water will get to that bare metal and then it's going to start to rust. As long as you get the metal covered and it doesn't get wet before you get it painted, I've done cars, I've done paint jobs that are over 20 years old that still look just as good. And then I've also done jobs for working at shops, and the shop will get it in primer. The shop would set it outside. It'd sit outside for a month, and then we'd bring it back in and block it. Well, then here 4 years later, you see the Bondo's cracking, or that's not good. So anyways, that's where we're at with this thing. So I'm hoping by the end of this week to get this side primed. So I got one skim coat I'm going to do on this just to kind of smooth it out, and it'll help me kind of get a better feel for it. Because looking at it, you see the different colors, you see the bare metal, you see where it broke through the last layer, so it starts kind of getting confusing. So we're just going to skim it so it's got one even coat over it and it'll be all the same color. I know some guys, if they get confused too, they'll just prime it and then they'll block the primer to find out where it's high and where it's low. The only problem though is primer is so expensive now compared to what it used to be. And then if you guys remember when I welded these rockers on, then I had a little seam right here. So I just put one skim coat in there just to make it so it's all perfectly flat, smooth and straight. And then I started rubbing my hand on the rocker, and there are just a couple tiny low spots. They're not even dense. I think I'll be able to just block them out of the epoxy. But I got to go through, block the rocker. The plan is by the end of the week to get this whole side of the car in primer. Once it's in primer, if I got this whole car all the body work done and all in primer, then it takes about 2 full days. It takes about 16 hours to block the whole thing out and do the jams. Well, actually this is a bigger car, so it'd probably be more like 20 hours. But once it's all in primer, it goes pretty fast. And then back here is kind of the same thing. I just did a smooth coat, just enough so that when you run your fingers over it, it feels perfect and seamless. And then I didn't have to do anything over here. I had my weld seam actually goes like right here, and then it drops down right here. So I left the back of the rocker in its original spot, and then I did the same thing on the front of the rocker. When I put the rocker on, I had a seam right at the front. So this door originally had a bunch of filler on it. We hammered and dollied, got most of it out, and then the epoxy, I got the door good enough where once I blocked the door, it was good to go. So there's a couple spots here that look like they're low, but they're not. The only low spot maybe is right here. It's just a little low from whoever put the trim on here last. They over tightened the trim and bent the door. That's another thing. When you guys get the cars, you get a car like this and you get it painted, you go to put the trim back on, the trim just has to be snug. Don't tighten the trim. I've seen guys where they have the car perfectly straight, they get it from the body shop, and then they bring it home to put their own trim on, and they tighten the trim too tight, and then now next thing you know is the body panel's waving like this, because every spot where they have where they have a screw going through will pull the metal in, and it'll look like it's high here, and then it'll dip in between, and then it'll come back out, or the trim itself will be wavy. So but yeah, we're coming right along, guys. So hopefully by the end of this week we'll have this side in primer. I got a bunch of stuff on the hood, so I can't show you, but we did sandblast. I sandblasted all the rust. If you guys remember, the front of this inner panel was all rusty and flaky. Same thing with this. There's still some broken bolts on here, but Bob can take care of that when he gets it home. That, or if he wants, I'll do it. But they're all sandblasted. I sandblasted and epoxied the inside of that fender too, because it was a little rusty. I did the bottom of the hood. I'm gonna have to take the hood off. It's rusting on the back side of this, and before it rusts through, I gotta sandblast the back side. I'll do that once I get this side in primer. Once I get the sides body worked and blocked and ready for paint, the hood's coming off, and then I'm gonna paint the car, and then I can pull the car out of here, and then I'll work on the hood and the trunk lid. Like, here's the back side of the trunk lid. I started sandblasting it, but it was taking a long time to blast through all this. So what I'm gonna do is just sand it or chemically strip it, I guess. I don't really know what I'm gonna do to get. I gotta strip all this off, and you can see it's rusting around all these edges, and I gotta get that fixed, because otherwise the way it's rusting around these is in a couple of years you'll just have a triangle rust shape on the other side poking through, because it'll just start rusting from the back side. And I'm assuming it's because there's a little bit of give in this. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. Oh no, the phone's touching my hand. But so I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. There might be a situation where maybe I'll have to remove the skin, and then I don't know. Then I could hammer these, and I could kind of bend these edges just away a hair. But that sounds like a lot of work and time consuming, and I don't think Bob's gonna want to pay me to do all that, so we'll see. There's another thing too. You guys are doing these cars on your own. I'm doing this for someone, so I can only do what they're willing to pay for, right? I can't do a $100,000 restoration on this if they're only willing to spend $10,000 or whatever it's gonna be. So on some of my videos, I'm sure there's going to be naysayers saying that I'm a hack and I'm doing it wrong, but you can only do it to what level the person is willing to pay. So we don't necessarily cut corners, but you got to make decisions here and there. When I was sandblasting, then the back of this was all nasty looking. It had flaking paint and rust, some surface rust, so I blasted all of it. The good thing too is it's not blasted all the way down, but I got the bulk of the rust off. And up here, shoot, I'll have to re-sandblast some of this. But yeah, actually I'm gonna have to re-sandblast all of this almost, or at least right in here. I gotta get this stuff. And then like, all this stuff is chipping off all this old seam sealer, so I'll scrape all the seam sealer out, or that'll be something where my father-in-law is going to want to save money and he'll want to do that himself. So, and then he can just paint this black because you don't ever see it. Once the bumper is on, the bumper comes to like right here. I mean, you don't really see any of this. You might see this spot right in here just when you're putting gas in it, but we still got to do the fender skirts. We got to get those stripped. This side is pretty good. I think the only real spot of body work I got is on the door skin where I put the door skin on. Otherwise, the rest of this side, there might be 1 or 2 dings on the fender. But this side was like, this side was unmolested pretty much, was really nice. Where else are we at then with this? Some guys swear by using like Rage Bondo. I use this stuff, Evercoat Lightweight. I remember not long ago this stuff was $17 a gallon. It is now $45 a gallon. So that's another thing too. You guys got to decide where. I think that Rage is almost 100. It's got to be $80 or $100 a gallon. And I mean, granted, I'll only go probably 1 gallon on this thing, and most of it ends up on the floor. You know, you guys can see how much dust and dirt I got on the back of the booth here. And that stuff doesn't matter, having it, the dust and the dirt in the back of the booth, that's up by the fan. And as long as I'm not walking over it, then I'm not trekking it everywhere. So when I go to prime this, I'll do a video of me priming this. I'm gonna give you guys, show you guys a little some, I don't know, technique or something if you guys want. I'm gonna come back at the end of the day and show you guys what I've got done on this, and that'll start right now. Okay, so we're at the end of the day. I did my 1 coat of skim here, and then I kind of just did another one up there just to kind of blend the two. Sometimes if you just apply it there, then you'll get a weird, it'll feel like a low spot where it stops. So by doing a coat over there, as long as this coat is a little tacky, or as long as it's not completely dry, you can take that run and kind of overlap them and feather them into each other, and they'll still stick to each other. So I got this squared away now. I got this seam all cleaned up. The front of the quarter is all cleaned up and ready to go. There was a little wave right here. There's a factory lead seam that goes from here and across. So underneath the primer, this is all lead, and you know, it was all done by hand, not robots. It's not perfect. You know, it all depends on the guy, how many cases or how many cans of beer he had the night before. Same thing back here. There's a factory lead seam that goes right here. And so this is all lead, and it didn't feel quite right. So we smoothed it out. And then over here is a stamping flaw. It was a little low spot from when they stamped this panel out. Then the way the dies worked and stuff, the way the metal shrinks and stretches, there's always stamping flaws. So, and then what was it on this door? We fixed that one little spot and got it feathered out. I went and got this spot on the fender fixed, so that's good to go now. I went and cleaned up all the edges on the fender, went and cleaned up all the edges on the doors. I ended up, there was like 3 or 4 spots on the rocker that were kind of dinged up. It might have been from when I was putting the rocker on. Then I had to push kind of hard to get the rocker to fit quite right when I tacked it. So it might have been little dents from the palm of my hand. But I could have just fixed a couple little spots. I just said to heck with it. And just sometimes it's faster, just do 1 coat over the whole thing, and then you sand it once and then it's done. I could sand it a little bit more, but I'll get to that. So now I got all I have left. There's some pinholes and a couple imperfections in the Bondo. I gotta just do just kind of a scrape and fill, kind of fill in this stuff. If I get up close, the can of Bondo I used for the fender was old and not very good. I ended up just throwing it away. But I gotta go through, I gotta touch up the edge. Now would be the time to put all the holes back in the fender before I prime it. And then, yeah, you can just see some more pinholes. So I'm just gonna mix up a coat that's really thin and scrape it in there. So it'll be kind of like this. It'll just be like a transparent coat. So I gotta touch up the body line, the underneath side of it, just to kind of make sure that's 100%. And then I gotta do the same thing on the bottom of that door, if you guys remember, I made the bottom of the door and my weld seam was just underneath the body line. So I got to do just one coat over that just to kind of smooth it out. And then on the back, back here, I just have to dress up this body line. So it'll be probably 2 coats. It'll just be 1 coat to get the bottom good to go. And then it'll be just another coat just to touch up the body line, I think. So should be pretty easy. And then this whole side is going to get block sanded with 180 grit. And then it'll be ready for primer. So still a lot to do. Not really, yes, I don't know. There's still a lot of hours left to do before it's ready for primer. And then before it's ready for paint. And then after it's painted, it's got to get sanded again and buffed. So there's still a lot of work left to do. It's a big car. It's like doing a Suburban or a crew cab pickup truck with a crew cab long box with a topper. It's like, this thing's just massive. So, and then good way to like clean up these holes is you just get a drill and just put like an 1/8 inch drill bit on it. And when you get it, let's see if I can do it without messing it all up. You would like drill through the mud, right? And then while it's spinning, you would just go and kind of outline the holes. And then, like, I'm pretty sure there's a hole right there, but we don't need that hole because we're using the big holes, not the little holes. But it works good too for the edges. Like I did it on the back or on this quarter because when I was doing this, then some of the bondo just kind of built up on this edge. So I just took the drill and ran it up and along, and that got it down to the point where all it takes is just a sec with a piece of sandpaper. So, but yeah, so this whole side, not the jambs, just the outside of the car are gonna get blocked with 180, and then it'll get primed, and then that's it. And once it's in primer, we'll jump to the other side. And then once that side's in primer, we'll probably take the hood off, set it aside, throw the trunk lid on real quick, just to make sure that the trunk lid fits good. If there's any fitment issues I have to do to get the trunk lid fixed before paint. And then the trunk lid will come off. And then depending on what color this thing's gonna go, we might blow it all apart and then panel paint it piece by piece. Sorry, I keep getting my finger in front of the camera, guys, I'm sorry. Still new to this, be nice. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, that's that really. This side is gonna end up getting blocked with just 180, and then we'll see if there's any spots. Maybe I'll block it with 120 or something, or 100 grit, and then I'll hit it with 180. Just you start out with something coarse, it just knocks that orange peel down faster, and it makes it straighter. The coarser the grit you use, the straighter it'll be. You know, if you guys can imagine, say this is a boog or a bondo, right? And you're trying to get it down to here, and you want it nice and flat. Well, there I go again. If you just start sanding this with, say, a 180 grit, all you're gonna do is just kind of round it off. You're not really gonna flatten it. But if you hit it with 40 grit's so aggressive that then you're actually shaving it, almost like, I mean, imagine taking a hand plane and just planing and taking shavings off, and then you can actually get it straight. And then once you get it really close, then you can switch and jump over to a finer grit. So like this whole side isn't 100%. It's about 85, 90%, right? As far as the body filler. When you run your hand across, you can still feel a couple little minor things, but once I 180 the whole thing, that'll take care of everything. That's gonna, if that makes sense. And then you don't, I mean, the primer I'm using, I've seen guys prime over 36 grit scratches and it turned out just fine, but that ends up taking a lot of primer. So take it down with 180 and then go through and prime it and sand it, paint it, sand it, buff it. Hope you don't scratch it putting back together, because if you do, then you gotta sand it, paint it, sand it, buff it again. So that's that, guys. Video of me priming this. I'm gonna give you guys, show you guys a little some, I don't know, technique or something if you guys want. Leave comments in the description, or leave comments down below, guys, and let me know I guess what you guys want to see. I mean, I'm not really into this YouTube thing quite yet, and I don't really know if I want to keep doing it, but leave a comment if you guys are liking this so far, or if there's something you guys want to see. And then, yeah, I don't know, click like, share, subscribe. So until next time, guys. Bye.